the Countryside Podcasts with Chris Skinner.
Middle of December, just about, and I've arrived at Hyash Farm at 10 o'clock in the morning, and there are blue skies, there's quite a breeze, but it's 15 degrees. So it's quite pleasant, isn't it, Chris?
It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a proper winter's day, clear and, well, it's not cool, we can't call it that, but it's really, really beautiful with the sun almost at its lowest behind us. It's early morning and it barely creeps above the horizon at this time of the year. And looking over to the west there's a half a moon suspended in the sky there, still illuminated by the sun. Really, really beautiful morning. Lucky to be here, lucky to be alive, you feel sometimes.
Just seen a wonderful jay, the loping flight, the colours going up into the tree over there.
Yes, and then the field behind us, it's known as the Temple Field. There's two Romano-Celtic temples on the far end of the field, and the field's sort of splattered with rooks, food-carrying crows in amongst them, and lots of jackdaws there, and they're all feasting on the soil invertebrates, on the close grazed grass. And there's 4 horses right behind us, just grazing away in that sunshine.
We've had buckets more rain since I was last with you.
No, every drop is hugely valuable. It's a pound a drop still. We're really almost still drought stricken in parts of the farm here. It's very sandy, well-drained soil. Yesterday morning, the field behind us, we're at the base of a valley here, that was running with water about 10 yards wide, just an inch or two deep, because the rain came faster than the ground could absorb it, and that's all now soaked in, exactly what it's meant to do. Anyway, we're standing by one of the areas of woodland here at Hyash Farm. It's called Cantley Hill Plantation. On the farm we call it the Bluebell Wood, because a little bit further down there's some steep hills which you can see through there, and it's a sight, just gladdens the heart in late April and early May. It's the bluebell displays at the farm here, so really variable soil types, and all through the woodland there are avenues of trees planted out about 150 years ago, and round the outside of the wood and scattered in amongst all the conifers there, because we touched on conifers last week. It's a little bit of an unusual one because yew tree, which is what we talked about on last week's Countryside podcast, doesn't have the traditional cones that you associate with coniferous trees. It has those bright red, what we called heralds, which are in fact cones, but they don't look like cones. And that sort of set me thinking that we have another unusual conifer here at the farm, and it's an introduced species called the European larch, Larix decidua. And it is unusual, almost unique among conifers, in that it's, deciduous, it loses its needles. You normally associate, there's Scots pines and Douglas and hemlock all the way around us. That's a massive Douglas fir going up about 90, 100 feet probably, that one.
Ramrod straight, that, isn't it?
It is, yes, and the ones in the back, there's some glorious Scots pines there, and those ones over there being lit by the sunlight, they're a good 100 feet plus, over 30 metres tall, those ones. They're giants and really beautiful. But these ones in front of us, the larch trees, they're almost bare. Just as we drove down the track, this lovely low sun here in the morning was just illuminating the last of the foliage, and I've got us a twig here, and you can see they're little bunches of, they are needles, but they come out in little spurs on the tiny branches, about 5 or 6 tiny little needles, and then that was a rabbit right in front of us. We can tell where Rat is. He's close by. He's flushing rabbits this morning in the brambles, and he didn't see that one, and it skeltered off. So these needles are now all dropping off, and the reason is they don't have this sort of waxy cuticle over the needles like the traditional evergreen trees do. So at this time of the year onwards, when we get the frosts, if we get them, the larch would lose all the moisture out of the needles and the tree wouldn't be able to replace it. So it's deciduous, it drops all the needles and becomes a bare tree. I said it was introduced to this country from Europe. It grows way down southern Mediterranean, Greece, Yugoslavia. You'll see it down there quite commonly, and it was brought in because it's a very beautiful tree, it's tall, it's graceful, the sort of branches hang down and it's kind of demure to look at. It's really beautiful. So it's introduced, I think about 1625, as a kind of ornamental tree to start with. And it was about 100 years or so after that, mid-1700s, that it was discovered that the wood is extremely valuable. It's really hardy, and I'm just watching Rat with a smile in my voice because he's following that invisible trail that rabbit left.
Rat, you're a day and $1 too late. He's there.
He is, but he's going to follow that right down through the wood, and there's a warren about 100 yards from us, and the rabbit will have disappeared down there. Anyway, it's very distracting, this dog, to have with us. Anyway, the wood was discovered to have huge timber value because you can cut it, slice it, and it doesn't kind of warp or shrink like normal timber does. It's got a lot of resin in it, and therefore it's quite waterproof, and people know it today because we still use it quite widely for things like fencing outside. You can use it as posts. Larch lap fencing in particular is really valuable and commonly used. So I started to do a little bit of research about it. Why did it suddenly become so widely planted? Well, in the mid-1700s, it was one of the big Perthshire estates where larch was being planted and grown, that the owner, the Duke of Atholl, got quite, how do I put it? He became intoxicated with larch and started to want to grow it all over his estate. And because it's part of the estate and it was massive, thousands and thousands of acres of upland hill country in Perthshire, and he was stood and looked up at the mountains, and they go up 8,000 odd metres up there. They're quite high, some of them. Sorry, I should say feet, 7,000 or 8,000 feet high, and nobody could kind of climb up. So he got together with some other landowners, and they got their foresters to collect larch seed. And larch is produced in the cones, and I bought a branch here. You can actually see the cones, like traditional pine cones. They're very hard and woody and full of scales, and you can just peel them off. Now, unusually, they stay on the tree for 1, 2, or even 3 years before they actually drop off. But during that time, on hot summer days, the scales open and they release the seeds, and they're like paper. Very, very light, and they kind of have a wing on them, which helps them when they do drop on out of the cone onto the ground. They get distributed about, and they will self-seed if the conditions are right for them. Anyway, the Duke of Atholl instructed his foresters to collect as many seeds as they could, and they started loading. And you have to sort of scratch your head about the humour when you look back at what we did, of our way of overcoming a problem of getting the larch trees to go up into the mountains. So they loaded wooden cannon shells and instead of using it to sort of fight your enemy, they fired these cannon shells up into the tops of the mountains, and when the wooden shell hit the side of the mountain, it burst open and spread the seed. And he's reputed to have planted on his estate, on the lower ground and on the mountains, 16 million larch trees. He became absolutely intoxicated with the trees, and I got interested in them about 30 odd years ago and started planting them. And I must say I got a bit sort of intoxicated by them because I have planted them all over the farm. But this avenue in front of us is larch all along the front of the wood here. Some have long since keeled over. You can see the odd stump laying there on the ground. But they were all planted about 12 feet apart, something like that, quite close together. And they form the edge of this wood and they're dotted in between. But they're good for birds as well. Those little paper-like seeds drop out on the ground, good for things like brambling. If the seeds are still in the cones, then birds like crossbills, which have got a specially adapted beak, which crosses over at the end, they can prise open these little bracts on the cones and actually get the seeds out before they drop out, and they feed up in the canopy as well, the trees. So really interesting. But the nice thing is, in the spring, all these little buds on this little twig I've brought, that's where all next year's needles spring out of. And then on the new growth right at the end, it hasn't even appeared yet, you have male and female little tiny cones appearing. The male cones are yellow in colour and they have masses of pollen, and the pollen is produced in huge amounts, like that yew tree we talked about last week's podcast. It sheds huge clouds of pollen. Well, the larch does the same thing and spreads its pollen out and about. So on the same little twigs you will have the female cones, which are bright red when they first emerge, and they're actually called larch roses. They're really beautiful, deep red in colour. And then the pollen from those male parts of the cone, so you have male and female on one tree, unlike the yew, which we saw last week, talked about. You have male trees and female trees. Larch, you have the male and female on the same tree, and they can self-fertilise, or the pollen can blow everywhere. It's microscopic, the pollen, and it's got little air sacs on it, so it goes out and about for miles, so it's a bit hit and miss. So whether the cones get fertilised, and if they do, they start to grow, and you get these proper cones developing over the summer. They go from that blood red colour, larch roses, to green and hard, and then eventually to the normal cone shape. And then the cones face downwards like that, and you can see them all over the tree in front of us. Look like hundreds of cones on a branch. There's literally thousands on the tree. Look above us, the weight of them. It's phenomenal how many cones.
It really does overproduce, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it does. And the thing is, they're quite heavy. The branches are heavy, which again gives this the larch tree that lovely sort of deciduous, sort of hanging look about it. It looks very graceful, is the only way, because the branches are still flexible, although those over above us are really weighted.
Do you see evidence of larch saplings then, self-seeding?
No, it's funny enough here, not. Most of the larch trees on the estates, particularly up in Scotland, have been hand planted.
Or cannonball.
Or cannonball the seed. But even so, that's like a natural process, but in an unusual place. But having said that, in southern Europe, up in Greece, in the mountains there, they just do reseed naturally. But they will do, if you've got a good conifer plantation, larch will reseed itself, and that has happened at High Ash Farm, but more so with the Scots pine, which is another conifer, obviously, and there's about 5 acres on the south side of High Ash where Scots pine has reseeded itself naturally, and they're not like the forestry trees you might see down in southwest Norfolk, in Thetford, in Breckland, around that area. You see lots of conifer plantations. In fact, the Forestry Commission did start planting larch in the very early 1900s and did big, massive areas, which did let the light into the woodland floor, but with the Scots pine, and then later several other different pine species, like Corsican pine, for instance, some of the introduced species, they planted them so thickly because if you don't give trees light on their sides, they have to go upwards, and occasionally they'd plant hardwoods in amongst them, and then either the conifers, the larch in particular, that would be called a nurse tree, and you'd fell those, because that's the other beauty of larch. You don't have to wait 100 years as you do with some of the hardwood species, Matthew. You can actually cut them at about 35, 40 years old and get the timber out of them. Having said that, these don't look very large at the bottom, only about 18 inches through the trunk, and they're over 100 years old. They seem to stop growing at a certain age, hardly get any larger, but just stand there and come into leaf each spring and then produce all these cones and this glorious golden foliage each autumn. So they're a delight to see, and it's a pleasure to share them with you. Now, there's quite a famous larch tree. It's not that far from here. It's called the laying larch, and it's on the Henham estate near Henham Hall in Suffolk, and it's one that's kind of grown. I think it fell over, but the owner of the estate down there decided to try and keep it alive, and it's still a fully grown larch tree. Some people also call it the resting larch because it's horizontal. It's got a massive top on it, and another amusing thing which people do to save things sometimes or to get them to reproduce, the old Southwell railway line that was dug up, and the sleepers and the rails itself was used to prop up the tree, and it's all underneath. It's quite amazing to see. So I have seen it, but I don't know if it's still there to this day. I saw it about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So there we are.
Henham Hall, it's they have a big annual pop concert there.
They certainly do. Yes, it's latitude, I think, and yes. So again, not far from here, and that's a very famous, perhaps the most famous tree in Suffolk, in fact.
Well, I like your ones here.
Yes, I mean they're beautiful.
They're going up the way that nature intended.
Yes, yep, they are upwards. That's really a great pleasure to have them here. And that's just a little bit of the history of them. They are interesting trees, but fancy as a conifer to lose all your needles every year. It's really unusual to have a deciduous conifer. It's almost unique. There are English trees which bear cones, things like alder, for instance, which grows in river valleys right by the water. And they do have cones, but technically I suppose you wouldn't call them a conifer because they're just a different species. But nevertheless, a little bit of history for you, and it makes me smile with some of the things we did to get the seed up into the mountainsides. Yes, I can see how addictive it is to grow them. They're beautiful trees.
The larch. Monty Python's favourite tree.
Exactly, I knew you were going to say that, yes.
We're the other side of the plantation now, still these lovely blue skies, and but right up on a hill here we've got a magnificent view of the Tass Valley, haven't we?
Yes, we're in Cantley Hill field, right out in the centre of it, and we're about 150 feet or so above the River Tass, which is on the west side of Hyash Farm, and the water meadows down there. That particular field, which I used to own, is called King's Mead Meadow. It's a really unusual name for it, and I don't quite know how it got that name way back in history. And the River Tass runs right down the centre of the valley that we're looking at, and the water meadows are flooded this morning because we had just over an inch of rain yesterday. That was pretty continuous, and what's happened is the river hasn't overflown, and so why are the meadows there all flooded this morning? I can see lots of species of gull out on the water. They think that's a new lake been created for them, so great arrangement. So what happened in the 1960s is the River Tass was straightened and dredged, and it had a muddy bottom full of sort of holes and rivulets coming off it, and where it went under trees there were tree roots there, and I spent quite a bit of my childhood fishing there. And once the river had been dredged, it became kind of like a high-speed canal, dead straight, and the water would rush down, and it was never more than about a foot deep most of the year, and the fish sort of disappeared gradually. And what happened is when they dredged it, they went through the muddy bottom, which had built up over centuries. They dredged all that out and went through into the gravel base with the excavators. And that meant the base of the River Tass became porous in the gravel, and the gravel seam runs underneath all those water meadows. So when the water level rises in the river, the water level under the meadows also rises. It's like a big sort of porous sponge underneath, if you like. And so the water comes up without the river overflowing. It's a really unusual sort of sight to see, but it's great because it's almost as though we're in an aircraft looking down on it, and it's quite a large expanse of water there this morning. It's probably 15-20 acres of water.
And our friend down at Lakenham in the mill there probably had to open the sluice gates yesterday.
Yes, he probably did. So the River Yare will be in full flow there this morning. After a rain event, it takes a day or even 2 days for the rivers to receive the water. That's what we call the catchment area, of which we're here. You know, we actually help to feed the River Tass from where we are, all this distance away. The rivers and dikes on the Hyash farm are in full flow this morning. But I've brought you to an area which is quite important on the farm. It's called Overwinter Wild Bird Seed Mix, and as we're in winter now, it's harvest time, if you like, for this particular crop, but not for humans, but for the birds and the mammals that live here at the farm. And I take particular pride in growing this particular crop here. It's got sunflowers in it, which are the tall plants that you can see, and there's lots of other plants, or seed-bearing plants. This one's millet here, and it's quite a tall plant, about 3 feet tall. And if I run my hand up the stem near the top, and just look at this, shiny millet seeds, probably 50 odd seeds on the palm of my hand. The little husks are blowing away. Look at that, shining in the sun.
Gorgeous, and that's fantastic eating, isn't it?
Absolutely.
For the
so
birds?
It's the right size for the smaller species of birds. And then there's fodder radish there, some of which has shed seed during the summer months, and it's come back into flower there. So it's a pinky purple flower. And so any late pollinators like moths about at this time of the year are busy pollinating and just feeding on the nectar. And then there's, during the summer months when it was in flower, it produced these paper-like pods here. And if I open those up, and they're really good because they're quite waterproof, and just shake the pod. I've opened it up on my hand, and there's some fodder radish seed. There's also mustard here, which is closely related. They're both crucifers. They have their flowers in the form of a cross, which you can see there. And so that's also excellent seed. Then right on the edge here, I can see cereals. If I bend down and pick that up, and this is barley, this one. And it's quite a good ear there. Again, if I crush up the ear and get the seed off it, you can see there's a good half a dozen seeds there. This one's quite nice, absolutely perfect. And if I squeeze it with my fingernails, you can see there's the sort of starchy centre to it, pure white in the middle.
Pure energy for the birds.
Absolutely. So it feeds a whole variety of different bird species, and there must be 8 or 9 seed-bearing plants here. And there's another one. This is mustard. Again, I'll do the same thing. It has all the seeds in tiny little pods there. So if I just crush that up, and I won't get you to eat them because this is English mustard, and the seeds are really hot. There they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seeds from just that one little pod. So each plant can produce several hundred seeds, and that again is food through the winter. And this is sunflower.
Yes, well, it's a sad,
Yeah,
sad sight, really, isn't it? Compared with its glory.
Oh yes, because we did a video which is still on High Ash Farm Facebook in the summer months. We flew over a couple of the fields there, which looked absolutely glorious, with the sunflowers all facing eastwards, as though they'd been trained to face a particular direction. And at this time of the year, the heads hang slightly downwards, which you can see behind us. You can see them silhouetted against the sun. And
there's no colour left.
No colour left, just the face of the sunflower. And there's still, on this particular one which I picked, there's still a few seeds left in there which are nice and viable. But you can see birds have perched on the top. Small birds and large birds like wood pigeon will feast on the seeds, and they reach over and peck the nutritious seeds out, which are absolutely full of oil. And they're just, if I take one of the seeds out, it's just like the ones if you're into feeding birds in your garden. And there it is, quite a large black seed, but it's absolutely brimming with oils and protein and starches there. And those seeds are viable. They would grow again, but I think most of those will be eaten. And now there's another plant growing here which is really interesting because it's a British native. I didn't plant it as such. It's here in the soil type. And if we just go forwards a few steps, this is where my father said, my son's finally lost the plot, because it's quite a tall plant, quite woody stem. It's about 4 feet tall, and it's called fat hen. And it was the bane of farmers in the 1950s and 60s who were growing sugar beet. But it produces these seed heads at this time of the year. They look quite nice, actually. They're quite sort of artistic, and they dry out and they produce masses of seed. Now, whether I can get the seed, just run my hand up the stem, and the seed is actually absolutely tiny.
Little black
there
dots.
They are. That's it, shiny black dots, much smaller than a pinhead. And there's thousands of seeds on each plant. I'm just rubbing it in my hand, and I can feel the seeds underneath the palm. Here they are, beautiful. There's probably 100 just on the palm of my hand from one part of the plant. And that is a magnet for many of our native birds, from quite large birds like pheasants and partridges, right down to birds like linnets will come and feed here, and they've already formed flocks here. And goldfinches, we came here in the summer months when there's a clump of teasels in the middle of the field here. About half an acre, which stretches along, and it's almost solid teasels, and that's sort of manna from heaven for birds like goldfinches as well, one of their natural foods. And last year I brought my camera here. The teasels were here again then, and got some lovely shots of the goldfinches actually feeding on the teasel seed, and that stays here right through the winter. So there we are. And I've just been amused to watch Rat, because whilst I was talking, he was busy chewing one of the leaves of the fodder radish, and his stomach took exception to that, and
a bit potent for him.
Yeah, it was a little bit on the strong side, so he's much better now, but he was he looked quite poorly for a second or two. That's his mistake for eating fodder radish, which you don't do.
He doesn't seem to learn, does he?
No, he chews up anything if he gets fed up waiting for us. But such a fantastic sight, and this has grown all over High Ash Farm. We've got patches like this. This particular area is about 2 hectares of overwinter wild bird scenery. It's paid for under stewardship. This one's under something called mid-tier, and next year these areas right across the UK will be curtailed quite largely. They'll be less grown, but smaller areas dotted about the countryside.
Do you have to resow it every year?
This one, yes. This is an annual mix that we're growing, apart from the teasels down the middle, which are biennials. But if I know where the patches are, I just drive the tractor around and leave them. So this is an annual mix. It's got cereals in it. The fodder radish is fantastic this year. You can see there's pods just on this plant. There's probably, you can hear them popping. nice sort of hollow sound there. And there's probably 100 pods, each pod with 8 or 10 seeds in it.
Wouldn't their seeds, though, sow themselves here?
They do. You can do that. You can sow these crops, but some of the seeds aren't very viable in the soil, and they don't last because I have such a, I was going to call it a burden of winter visiting birds here, that they pretty well eat everything. And so what we do is just chop the residue in late March, April time, and disc that into the soil, and then sow a fresh lot of seed each year, so I know exactly what mix we're going to get. But what I don't know and can't predict is how many of the British native plants come up as well, and that's the whole challenge. But the end result is to have a fantastic sort of variety of birds and mammals feeding. A deer come in here each evening. We have roe deer, fallow deer, there's a few fallows, quite a few munkjack come in here, and they eat anything that they like as well, including those fodder radish leaves. They seem to relish those, so although they're hot and sort of spicy, but it's the variety of all the different plants that make the kind of tapestry to attract all sorts of different species. And then birds come in, any seeds that drop on the ground, you can see there's been somebody scrabbing down here, because some of the seeds are tiny. But don't forget that at this time of the year we've got quite a large population of skylark here, and they'll come in here during daylight hours and they'll feed on any of the seed that drops on the ground as well, whereas when they're feeding their young out on the pastures, the winter pastures which we have at the farm, they'll be feeding their chicks in the spring on the insects, and that's one thing that's quite difficult to get the balance right. So insects in the summer months for feeding brood, and seed in the winter months for feeding the adults that overwinter here. So it's always quite a challenge to get it all right, but yeah, and you have to stand back, and you can't think that you've got wood pigeon and rooks and jackdaws feeding on it when you only want birds like the chaffinches, the linnets and the goldfinches feeding. So you stand back and let nature sort of sort itself out. You can't say no rooks today or what. It is a challenge, but nevertheless it's really enjoyable and hugely rewarding for the environment.
So now we know about overwinter wild bird seed mix. When Chris refers to that,
yes,
this is what he means.
Yep, exactly that, and it's quite a sight. Yep, and left for nature to relish.
I still miss the smiley faces of the sunflowers though, but theirs is quite a short-lived burst of colour, isn't it? But for the rest of the year they're doing their work.
Yes, but you have to be patient if you wait again till next year, and that's the beauty of learning about and understanding nature, that it's a big cyclical wheel and it all appears at different times of the year. So if you're patient and you wait, you'll get your reward again when you see those smiley sunflower faces or the bluebells at the end of April. He just hopped in, has he? Oh no,
No, he's still there. We're just parked up at the bottom of one of Chris's fields here, and quite a sight in this very bare-looking tree.
Matthew.
Chris, the sound of some of your favourite birds.
Matthew, it's one of the success stories for conservation at High Ash Farm. The house sparrows, one of those red list species, declined by 50% or more, and we have over 100 here. It's a huge smile on my face.
Chattering sparrows, just one of the sounds that you can hear on the High Ash Farm podcast. But we need a favour.
Yes, we do. We're asking for donations and any help that you can give to help keep the podcast going.
You can make a monthly or just a one-off payment. highashfarm.com/podcast.
Well done, Matthew. somebody's enjoying some early morning sunshine going right into the side of the tree. So it's on the south side of a venerable old ash tree. I think we came here during sort of late spring, early summer, and there was a pair of little owls nesting in here, and they've had a successful year. They've brought off 2 of the youngsters.
There's a pair of green eyes glaring back at us.
And I'll just have a look. Oh yes, the greenish yellow eyes, just a fierce looking owl looking at it. It's Athene noctua, Britain's smallest. What was a resident owl became extinct during the last ice age 10,000 years or so ago, and then it was reintroduced in 1850s. And really everybody's surprised to learn that owls actually can be about in daytime, but as their prey is mainly nocturnal, they've kind of switched their life cycle to really following their prey in the hours of darkness. So they've got good night vision. That particular species of owl's got very large eyes in relation to the size of the body. It's not a great deal bigger than a song thrush or a blackbird, only about 4 inches. It looks rather like a clenched fist, but they always have this really grumpy look on their face, and even as though it's sunbathing. So bearing in mind the sun is low on the horizon, right behind us, and it's shining directly into the tree, and the owl is all fluffed up. It doesn't seem concerned that we're sitting here, and it's just allowing the warmth of the sun, which is almost at right angles to it. Remember, during the summer months, the sun is high in the sky, and if you get sunburnt, it's usually on the top of your head. But at this time of the year, it strikes you kind of almost straight into your face, which if you're driving into the sun in your car, you'll know all about it. It's that glare of the low sun at this time of the year.
Great camouflage, though.
It is. It's almost perfect match to the bark of the tree all around it. It's brown and black speckled all over the breast, and it gives the impression that the owl actually looks like tree bark. So perfect camouflage, and that's one of their defense mechanisms, and they will stay quite still at this time of the year, just fluff themselves up. If it gets alarmed, it sits almost vertically upright and sort of makes itself tall and thin. They have a variety of calls, particularly at dusk. In this part of the farm, we've got several pairs of little owls spread out all over this area of farm in the old, venerable old trees full of holes. I'll put up nest boxes for them as well. And they have this plaintive call, which you hear across the valley here. It sounds almost like a cat mewing, but reintroduced in the mid-1800s in Nottinghamshire, several introductions, and then eventually they've spread nearly all over the UK now. They're still going northwards. But what it's doing is enjoying this warmth, and I think we have Susie Dent from Countdown fame and Dictionary Corner, actually, who's a bit of a wordsmith, and she loves looking up old words which have gone out of use. And this one was in use 200-300 years ago, and it's called apricity, and it describes in one word the warmth of the sun which you feel on your face at this time of the year. We're a week away really from the shortest day, and that's when apricity's at its uppermost, if you like, because the sun's at its lowest. If you get a sunny winter's day like we've got today, I can actually feel the warmth coming through the window on the side of my face here. So it's absolutely lovely. So that's what that owl is doing.
Apricity.
Apricity, yes, is a cracking word. Gone out of use, but if you want to impress your friends, just tell them a bit about apricity. It saves using 10 words trying to describe the warmth that you'd feel either through a window or on your face around about the time of the shortest day. And you have to use a whole series of words, but you can nail it in one with apricity, and that's what that little owl is doing. You are spoilt, Matthew.
I'm going to leave the owl to it and head off somewhere away from his perch and find some emails and letters. Oh, we're very close now there.
Look at
aren't we?
that. 12 feet away
Yeah.
from him, but we'll leave him to enjoy his daily dose of apricity.
Questions then coming via email, and it's hello to Kathy Jilks, who says, "Hi Chris, I love the podcast. I'm re-listening to old episodes and currently up to number 35.
Oh, wow.
So actually, Kathy's probably still in the middle of the summer,
Yes.
isn't she? I had an amazing birding experience during the summer. A fledged tree creeper flew into my kitchen. I caught him and it flew onto my shoulder and sat for about 5 minutes. Wow. I walked outside with it on my shoulder and waited till it flew off. And there is a picture. So this is evidence. Oh, and there's Kathy's shoulder attached to Kathy. And my word, a little tree creeper there who they're normally so timid, aren't they?
Absolutely. Basically, it's like a mouse crawling up a tree trunk. They're not related to woodpeckers in any ways, although they spend all their time on tree trunks, sort of skirting up and down. Really unusual flight pattern. They crawl up trees, and funny enough, it's really coincidental this. I sat in Birdhide in Fox's Grove last Sunday. I just filled all the feeders up and just sat there just waiting to see who and what was arriving, and on the sycamore tree, which was large and mature, covered in flaky bark, I suddenly noticed a tree creeper going up, and then absolutely delightful, another one joined it. There were two just skirting up the tree, almost out of sight, and then they flew back again down to the bottom of the same tree. They're almost as though they were pairing up at this time of the year, and the only adaptation, they haven't got feet like woodpeckers. They got their toes, 3 facing forwards and 1 facing backwards, so not adapted like woodpeckers' toes, although they spend all their time on tree trunks. Down curved beak, and the tail is about the only adaptation similar to woodpeckers, in that the central feathers of the tail, which spreads out quite broadly on a tree trunk, is specially stiffened. It's almost like a walking stick, but almost with a needle sharp, very frail legs that they have. They have no trouble skirting up trees, and just with the down curved beak they look for insects under the bark. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful birds. Brownish, beige, black stripes all over the back. Again, that camouflage bit against the bark. And underneath it's kind of creamy white. And at this time of the year, I've been quite confused more than once seeing tree creepers with a green breast, because as they climb up the trees, some of the pleurococcus rubs off on that sort of beigey white feathers, and you have a bird with a green breast.
Well, this one is as daft as a brush.
Yes.
Flying inside a house,
Yes.
and then consorting with a human.
Well, a dangerous thing to do in many cases, consorting with humans, but nevertheless, it was a magic moment for her and for us as well to share that image. That you are really, really spoiled.
Well done, Kathy. That's terrific.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. That's a fantastic photograph.
And Tony in Braintree sent us a photograph of snowdrops. From the archive from last year, no doubt, but actually, no. Tony says, they're definitely putting in an appearance now! ! Thanks largely to the lack of frost.
Yes, and I've noticed it on the farm. Ours are all poking up through the leaf litter, even in the shady woods at the bottom of the valley where it's a bit cooler. They'll be making an appearance, if not before the 25th of December, then certainly immediately afterwards. And one surprise, at the bottom of the farm, there's some naturalised narcissi down there, and there's one called pheasant's eye, and it's in full flower at the moment. Wow, that's changing seasons for you.
Well, if you've spotted any snowdrops or anything else that shouldn't be happening at this time of the year, or maybe you want to revel in something that is happening in the natural world that is typically December and, dare I say, Christmassy, Nice pictures of robins in the snow. Come on, let's have them. Please send them along. Chris@highashfarm.com. We love receiving all the mail that comes in to the podcast.
Yes, and thank you very much indeed. We love doing it. So next week we've got the shortest day, Sunday the 21st of December. Matthew and I will be back yet again, so do join us again then, please.